Welcome everyone, also online, to the RDA Data System Tools and Services for Crisis Situation Working Group P23 session. So thanks a lot for joining us. And before we start, just in case you're new with RDA, this is a slide with the 6 guiding principles that are at the very heart of the organization and the community. So moving on, I'm going to guide you through what we're going to discuss today. So we're going to start with some welcome and introductions and give you a bit of background over the working group, how it started, its objectives, its main aims. And then we're going to move on to an overview of the recent group work. We're going to hear from Virginia Mary, working group co-chair, on the results of from the CoData UNESCO group. Okay, yes, thank you. Okay, thank you. Then we're gonna move into the survey overview. So we've recently prepared a survey. It's still in development. It is currently going through an ethics approval. And Jacqueline Stevens and Burçak Pasbuk will talk to us a bit more about this. Finally, on the overview of recent work, we're going to hear from Nana Barathi on the data collection platform. It's a concept and a model, and we're going to discuss about that. Moving on, we're going to go into the discussion. We've prepared some questions for you, and then a wrap up and next steps. So basically, that's what we're planning to do today. And moving on. Okay, so now with introductions, my name is Athena. I'm the working group facilitator. I work for RDA Europe and the RDA Tiger project, which is why I'm here. And in the room with me, it's Stephanie Kieders, working group co-chair. And online, we have Burçak Pasbuk, working group co-chair. Francis, I think, couldn't make it, unfortunately. He's in Mongolia for another CoData crisis-related still workshop. Nana Barathi, working group co-chair, Jacqueline Stevens, working group member, Mario Cheng, working group member, and Virginia Mary. So we have prepared the collaborative notes document that you might have seen several of those already, so please sign in. And we're gonna ask you also after the presentations to declare interest on several upcoming activities. So please make sure to sign in and feel free to add any comments or ideas or questions to the document. Okay, so this is our aims for the session today. It aligns very well with the agenda. On your screen, you can see a QR code to join. So if you're not a member, please make sure to join us. And if you're interested in this work. In the collaborative notes at the very end of the document, you can find some useful resources, including the working group page on the RDA website, our case statement, and also some working documents that we're also going to present today. And I think with this, I will pass the floor on now to Stephanie to give us an overview of the group work and the objectives.
Thanks, Athena. I may need your help to progress the slides, but I'll see how I go. Okay, so first of all, I wanted to just briefly mention the objectives of the group, and I'll call it the STS-CS working group on the slides from now on, otherwise it's just too long. So what we're trying to do is identify what first responders, field workers, scientists, lab personnel, policymakers, national authorities, communities, and any other people involved in crisis actually need during crisis situations. What kind of data tools, system services do they need in the immediate crisis situation and for immediate decision making? We hope to also gain some insight into what's necessary at other stages of a crisis situation from what we find out there. So for example, when preparing for a crisis, mitigating a crisis during recovery and rebuilding, we are looking at 3 different case studies. So we're looking at cyclones, we're looking at COVID, and we're looking at earthquakes. And the final objective is to develop a final recommendation that specifies characteristics of data systems, tools, and services that key parties would need in crisis situations. So key parties are the ones we've just listed up there and possibly others. Next slide. Thank you. So there is also a UNESCO co-data working group on data policy in times of crisis, facilitated by Open Science, which has also a very catchy acronym. And I think Virginia and others can talk way more about this than I can, but the main point is they work in tandem, and the UNESCO co-data group is producing policy guidance for scientists and policymakers, whereas this group, the RDA co-data working group, focuses on what is needed for the development of digital tools for scientists, policymakers, and communities in addressing crisis situations, and what's necessary for the transformation of policy into action, in particular digital action. So what needs to happen to make the policy actually work out in real life? What systems, tools, and services are necessary? Next one, please. To give a bit of an overview over the background and timeline for the group. So there was a very informal meeting held at RDA Plenary 20 in Gothenburg in March 2023. We developed a case statement, which is now called a statement of work, I think, for the group over a few months in 2023, and got the group endorsed by RDA a bit over a year ago, just before the Plenary 21. We also secured support from RDA Tiger, which we're very grateful for, in October 2023 as well. And we held sessions at Plenary 21 and 22. And the notes and slides are linked from the collaborative. So these slides should be linked from the collaborative notes document, and you can actually click on those links if you like. It's a bit easier than finding them on the RDA page. We do hold monthly meetings of the working group. Please feel free to join the working group if you haven't already, and you will get invited to those meetings. They're currently set at a time that is convenient for Europeans and Australians. If we get people from elsewhere, that's perfectly fine. We'll adjust those meeting times. So just let us know that you're interested, and we're happy to include you. Thank you. So just a couple of achievements. As I've said, we've got the working group endorsed. We've got support from RDA Tiger. We've decided the use cases. There was a bit of discussion around those, but we've now settled on COVID, cyclones, and earthquakes. There was a mentoring pilot study done by Nana to show the feasibility, and he can, if there's any questions on that, he's much better placed to talk about those. But he had 3 student groups developing models relevant to crisis situations over a period of, I think, 3 months. And we have just, hot off the press, finished a survey about the digital tool needs and challenges for key stakeholders during crisis situations. That is currently sitting with an ethics committee, and I think Jackie might be able to give us an update when she and Berchak are talking about the survey further on. We hope that the survey will be ready for distribution very soon. So again, if you'd be happy to help us with distributing the survey, I think the collaborative notes document has a column where you can put your mark in. We will try to distribute it through RDA, but it would be great if people have other networks that might be more sort of attuned to people in crisis, like people working with crisis situations. That would be great if you could help us distribute those. Next slide, please. Okay, and I think that's it from me, unless there are any questions. Now, if there are questions from the chat, I think at the moment I can't see the chat, but if you like, you can just speak up, I think. Okay, can you just scroll right to the bottom? No, I think it's only me. Okay, so no questions so far. That's good. Or not, depending. So we'll hand over to Virginia to talk about the results of the work from the UNESCO and co-data group. Now, we'll have to see if this works. We'll drive the slides. And Virginia can speak.
Stephanie, thank you so much. You can hear me in the room. And Athena, thank you too for all the organizing of this session. To me, it is a great privilege to be part of the group here today. The fact that we have an RDA co-data working group on data systems, tools and services for crisis situations has proved to be an incredibly valuable and useful way forward. And to pull this into the path to enhance crisis management through advanced digital technologies is something we need to do. Now, to explain how far we've got, I think it's really important that, sorry, I'm just confirming my speaking language is English, sorry. I had to suddenly come up, there we are. I hope that's clear. So but for us, it's very important to share the work that we've been doing with UNESCO and CoData, because this has been a partnership that's been going on for 2 years. And I thank Bachak, who is online, who's been absolutely key, but Francis is the driver. Francis is the person who understands data policies. And I'm sorry he's not with us today because he is very much involved in a meeting that's happening in Mongolia at the moment. Might I have the next slide, please? So one of the reasons why we felt it was so important to have data policies for times of crisis was that really the COVID-19 pandemic and subsequent disasters and terrible conflicts have revealed deficiencies in the capacity of science to integrate data readily and efficiently into crisis preparation, response and recovery, policy and actions, thus significantly limiting the capacity of scientists and policymakers to have the full information from which they can make proper decisions. So it makes it really hard. So what we've done, if we can go to the next slide, please, is to bring into the system the fact that UNESCO has partnered with the Committee on Data, CoData, of the International Science Council to explore the principles of open science, as outlined in the 2021 UNESCO recommendations on open science, which could guide efficient and effective policies for data sharing and taking into account existing international policies and actions. So if we go to the next slide, please, I thought it would be important just to explain why open science is so important. It comes from Article 27 of the Human Rights Convention that was adopted in 1947 at the United Nations. And what they've done with UNESCO's really incredible thinking is that they've linked this article to the SDGs and to overcoming the global challenges that require efficient, equitable and transparent and collaborative and inclusive science. And by bringing this together, they have shown us that there's the need for science to be much more connected to the societal needs and more accessible for all. So this real need to bridge science, technology and innovation gaps has been absolutely vital. And it is really the most important thing is to share scientific advancement and its benefits. So an incredible declaration, which I'm thrilled that UNESCO picked up and responded to for 2021. Next slide, please. So what it's all about is this incredible UNESCO recommendations on open science. And if we go to the next, you will see that not only is that recommendation really important, it shows how open science works together. It increases scientific collaboration and sharing of information for the benefits of all. It makes multilingual scientific knowledge and openly accessible, is openly accessible and reusable by everyone, which we think is incredibly important. And it opens the processes of scientific knowledge, creation, evaluation, and communication to societal actors beyond the traditional scientific community. So it really facilitates communities at very local levels, every part of the community, every indigenous member of the community, all of them to try and access this data. So an incredibly important principle. And the next slide takes us to how these hazard information profiles might, how the UN landmark agreements might have an impact. So in 2015, we had an incredible year. We brought together the Sendai framework, the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement. Now, the Paris Agreement is being discussed again at COP in Baku at this moment in Tajikistan. And I'm sure you've probably seen some of the media coverage of it. But basically, the Paris Agreement, the Sustainable Goals, and the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction all work together. And one of the calls that came out of this work, next slide please, was the fact that we really needed to try and understand what the hazard definitions were and the hazard classification and how we could develop hazard information profiles. And if you go to the next slide, you will see that there are 302 hazard information profiles that have come together, which are now being updated for the Global Platform on Disaster Risk Reduction for 2025, something that we believe is really important. But to link all this together, we then had to go on to the next slide to turn it into something that is accessible on the internet, which we think is really important. So you see it here now readily accessible and available. But what we noticed then was that we really need to do something more than that. So this is the call for why we went on to the next slide. You will see that we have now launched the global consultation on developing data policies for crisis, facilitated by Open Science, and of course demonstrated by this rather sad picture that is on this slide, next slide, which shows you that flooding is terrifying. And we only have to think of what's happening already in Costa Rica, but also last week in Spain and all over the world. Even in Cyprus, there have been floods. Everywhere has had a very big problem with flooding, as we did so much of the year with heat. So it's really frightening what these things are, and we need to be able to engage more. So this launch has taken us forward into the next step. So next slide, please. You will see that we are inviting all of you who might be interested stakeholders to review and provide feedback, as well as sharing comments and other inputs on the following 3 documents: a fact sheet for developing data policies, guidance for the development of those data policies, but also a checklist. And is that what we need? Do we need more? So if we could go to the next slide, we'll start with the fact sheet, and you'll see that it's only about 7 pages long, but it includes why we're doing it, but also brings in, next slide, this really important bit about data principles and values, something that is so important at the heart of open science. So something we really hold UNESCO up in great credit for explaining this as well, linking to fair, care, and trust data principles in every way we can. So that's the data policies. The next one is the guidance for the development of these data policies, so that those who are policymakers can help to make policymakers understanding that they need to use a whole of society, whole of system approach in order to engage and support all the UN landmark agreements and indeed their own national needs. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see that some of these data policies come through very clearly, showing that what we need to do before, during, and after a crisis. And I commend you to look at it and see what you think and see what we've missed. But we've thought really hard about this. And the next slide takes you to the checklist. And the checklist is also very clearly a draft. And the checklist covers literally 10 areas of concern. Next. And these 10 areas of concern can be summarized by establishing clear objectives, roles, and responsibilities, ensuring availability and access to adequate resources, upholding ethical standards and protecting human rights, developing data governance and management protocols, facilitating open data collection and accessibility, strengthen open data infrastructure and capabilities, promote interdisciplinarity, multi-stakeholder and international collaboration, strengthen public engagement and communication, establish mechanisms for documentation, monitoring and evaluation, and continue to build this long-term preparedness and resilience plans, knowing that the numbers of crises seems to be increasing really every year. So the next slide just takes you to how you can share your feedback. So it's very much using the open science mechanism that you can see very clearly, sending an email through to Open Science to make sure that we can all access and see what you want, and we can respond if there's any problems with the data to see how we can help. Now you'll notice that the deadline for comments is Monday, the 16th of December. We would love you to review this. We'd love you to share emails. We'd love you to engage, because we know that your views will really help us to see what might be good that we can, or what we can do better. For instance, some of the messages we're already receiving is that we need more on those people who are implementing the data policies and who would they share the data with. So some really exciting things coming through already, and we would would really be grateful. And none of this would have happened without our incredible RDA network, who've been absolutely key. And thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Nana, so much for your engagement, for all the work that you've done. And it's lovely to have Jackie and Burchak online to present a bit more with Myra and others who are all part of our working group, and we hope more will join. Thank you very much, Stephanie. Over to Burchak.
Thanks very much, Virgin. Sorry. Can I? Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. It's a bit juggly. Thanks very much, Virginia. Any questions from the room? No? Everyone's shaking their head? Okay, fine. Then let's hand over to Burchak and Jackie about the survey that the group has developed.
Hello. Buenas tardes from Turkey. Thank you to organizers in Costa Rica. And thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Athena. Thank you, my colleagues online, Nana, Jackie, Virginia, especially, which we make a great team and we meet regularly, believe us, to bring this presentation into you. We spend a lot of time and I hope it's gonna go well. So if you jump to the next slide. So the previous one, please, just to tell you what it is about. So we are aiming to, here. So as part of the, as a work output of the working group data systems, tools and services under RDA Codata collaboration, we're trying to run a survey where we will explain, myself and my colleague Jackie, where we are up to, why we started with the idea of the survey, and what are our expectations, and we're looking for your contributions as responders, because in a survey response rate is important, and as researchers it's our priority to receive as much response as possible to be able to have some robust statistics and inference at the end of the day. If you jump to the next slide, please. So the background of the survey comes from the idea of the COVID-19. So since 2020, as my colleague Virginia stated, so COVID-19 had a huge impact in the understanding of crisis, emergencies, and disaster management, risk management across the world, across the globe. So there was a lot of data arriving from different countries at different times. Some like huge amount of data, big data arrived. So during COVID-19. And on 6th of February 2023, almost 2 years ago, we experienced a centennial earthquakes, 3 earthquakes actually in 1 week, 2 big ones, main ones on the same day, and another one in the same week. So we call it like centennial earthquake because it's squarely impacted 11 cities directly with huge amount of damage. So we observed, like, one was pandemic, another was a geohazard like earthquakes, and many things happened around the world. The frequency and types of disaster and emergencies change. So we as researchers need to supplement some background information, scientific analysis to decision and policymakers, so that we have some good for the community, for sustainability, for future generations. So we are very much aware, like individual awareness to institutional awareness, that we need data in times of crisis, especially, which is our UNESCO project as well, UNESCO Codata project. But we are also aware that we need data in the normal period of life. So we are thinking of the before, during, and after of any crisis, emergencies, and disasters. So we need to get answers about types of data, where it happened, why it happened, who collected data, how, when, what type, why. So there are several questions you can raise in a survey, and to collect information, data from the field, especially in times of crisis and especially in conflict situations, for example. It's really, really hard because people in that area are victims, survivors themselves. So that's why we are trying to come with an idea with digital systems, tools and services, we name it, to be able to get information, collect data, use data, understand data, and interpret data. Next slide, please. So as I said, the aim of this project that we are doing within this project survey is to describe what type of systems, tools, methods that disaster communities can use during the planning, so pre-phase, before something happens, during the planning, management, and recovery of emergencies and crisis situations, which is very crucial of the survival of the livelihood and humanity across the globe. And the study population for us, the population for sampling frame and population for the survey is the multiple stakeholders, including the ones listed here, but not only limited to those, like academic, local government, academia, researchers, local government, national governments, local governments and municipalities, private sector, NGOs, and any interested individual who has some awareness and experience of emergency and crisis situations and understand the need for data there. So it's open to anybody, any stakeholder, from individual to various institutions, organizations, academia, universities, etc. And to be able to do a survey, the first step is to get an ethical review, not to cause harm to anybody, any living, anything. So we are in the ethical approval process. So I'll give the word to my colleague Jackie in Australia. And it's almost midnight in Turkey, and she just woke up. It's the daytime morning start in Australia. That's what I like about Zoom. Thank you. Floor is yours, Jackie.
Great, thanks, Birchak. Can you hear me? Yeah, great, thank you. Yeah, so my name is Jackie Stevens. I'm a researcher at Flinders University, which is in Adelaide in Australia. And like Birchak said, it's just 7 o'clock in the morning here. It's a beautiful morning. Yeah, so we're going to put this project through the Flinders University Ethics Committee. Flinders University's Ethics Committee is an Australian National Health and Medical Research approved ethics committee. Our ethics here in Australia has quite stringent guidelines, and they also review international projects like this that involve multiple countries to make sure that the ethics review also adheres to the requirements of the different locations. For example, the European data privacy requirements that came into effect recently. So it is currently under review. It was reviewed actually on Monday, which was 2 days ago for me. And we're just waiting to get the feedback from the ethics committee. But what we're doing in the survey is what we've put forward is that the participant recruitment will include not only people today who put on our collaborative notes that they're interested in receiving the survey, but we'll also be sharing it through our networks and our newsletters. Those people who indicate today that they're interested in participating can share it through their networks as well. We want to try and get as many people as possible from a wide range of sectors, as Birchak has said, so that we can try and really understand the broad scope of what kind of data and what kind of data systems are being used and where the gaps are that need to be strengthened in the future. We're going to be doing the survey using SurveyMonkey. It's a simple tool that everyone can use. We will be collecting it as non-identifiable data. So the only piece of information we will have about each person is whatever you provide. So we are asking for some basic demographics about, who each person is. That's purely just for descriptive purposes. And then the data will be stored in Australia, and we will also potentially have the option for people to provide us with their information if they choose to participate in a follow-up component of work we'll be doing after this survey. Next slide, please. So the survey is quite long. It's taken the group a little while to come to a decision about the final data collection. There's a fine balance when creating a survey between trying to get a broad scope of information but not making it too long. So it's been a bit of a process, but basically the data we'll be collecting includes questions about the data types that are needed, the data sources that are used, what kinds of systems and infrastructures are used in the field, how those integrate with other tools that are being used in the field during crises, how accessible data is, some common issues, and it shouldn't take any longer, we're hoping, than about 20 to 30 minutes to fill in. It's all predetermined answers. So it's just click the boxes as opposed to open source answers. So it really should be fairly fast and not particularly onerous, which is the plan. Next slide, please. So the data analysis will be mostly descriptive statistics. So this is more of a quantitative piece of work. And the expected outcomes are that we will have a broad understanding of how data is being used in these kinds of circumstances, and we'll be able to identify if there's any gaps in the current systems in place. We'll be able to share those findings across our various communities and also through our RDA, UNESCO and code data networks. And as I said, there will be, we're hoping, an option where people can provide us with their contact details if they would like to continue into a second piece of work where we'd like to do some more in-depth qualitative interviews with people to explore some of those findings. And that will build on this as well, which will be a second piece of work we'll undertake down the track that we're considering. So that's a bit about the survey. Any questions I'm happy to answer. In the chat, my contact details are also in the collaborative notes if anyone wants to reach out. But you will hear from Berchek and the team very soon with the link to the survey. As I said, it is under review. I'm sure they'll have some questions, but it's a fairly straightforward piece of work. So we're hoping we will have this up and running in the next few weeks. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thanks very much, Berchek and Jackie. Any questions from here? No? All good? Okay. Then let's go to the next part. Oh, one less. Okay. That's for our colleague Nana Barati to talk about the data collection platform, and I'll shut up again.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And it's been a great team and a great ride. So you heard from Stephanie setting the stage, and then from Virginia talking about the policy and the checklist. Leading on from there, Berchek and Jackie explained how or what sort of data that we need to collect and what information is coming from there. So now think about the next stage, which is the translating that. How do we get this data together? And what sort of tools or systems might be necessary? This is what we are envisaging, where rubber meets the road. So in this, we can roll to the next slide, please. Next slide, please. Oh, yeah, thank you. So, so why data? I mean, this is a silly question here, but for the sake of completeness, I will outline. Of course, data gives us informed, optimal, and responsible decision making, and helps with the risk management in times of crisis. Of course, it helps with resource allocation, coordination, communication, etc. But it also helps to ensure that any help or services provided are transparent, equitable, fair, and so on. And it is accounted for. But even more importantly, the data could be used in the pre-crisis for planning and preparedness, and during crisis in rendering help, and as well as mitigating any risk, and in the post-crisis in recovery, resilience, as well as learning and improvement. So you cannot, the data is indispensable, but we know very well that this is, in crisis, it also takes even more important or significant role. And as we can roll to the next one. The next, yeah, that's great. And but it does, but there, I mean, it comes with a pinch of, so I mean, it comes with own challenges, even in a very routine day-to-day organizational context. data is always comes with a number of challenges associated, including various organizational barriers and structural barriers and so on, the cost of collection, etc. And the quality is often stymied. This is in a good, simple, often in a mono-organizational context. As Burchak explained, of course, crisis puts another spin to it. In addition to all the costs and so on, you are trying to, especially if you're collecting data during the crisis, it's even harder. It comes with data overload. It can come. I mean, there are also ethical issues in collecting data in this situation. But at the same time, this data is useful to that context and for the future, so it must be collected. So, but there are, as I said, there are structural barriers, and people don't want to change. Even in the way we do things, we don't want to change. So it is and then the infrastructure for even collecting the data could be damaged, or the communications might be broken, and so on. Then, in addition, of course, there are privacy and other concerns. So, given these barriers, particularly, and how do we actually collect the data for these three phases? And so it is so what kind of system might be necessary for this and to remedy these the data that's already available. So we can roll to the next one, please. Yeah. So here we are envisaging a system that I want to take it a bit further and explore with you and get your inputs as well. So this is a conceptualization of the system. Of course, as any good problem solving, we need to understand and formulate the problem and the constraints collaboratively. That is what we are doing at the moment. We would need to set up a structure and the governance for collecting. We would try to use existing tools first. In the absence of that, we should consider building something. And data coming from multiple sources in different situations, we will have to use different or flexible ontologies, many of which are available even for the crisis context. And of course, it needs to be built with certain principles. That principles would, of course, include having appropriate appropriate modular designs, and it should be aligned with standards, the Sendai framework, and SPHERE, etc. And as far as possible, it also needs to be automable and machine readable, and so on. It needs to be collaborative development. It should allow for these data sets to come together in both in an integrative fashion, or even in some cases as they are available. So one of the things that we thought about in this context is to use the twin principles of crowdsourcing and gamification as far as possible. That is, meaning tap into the wisdom of the crowd in the manner that everyone could contribute, but at the same time also engage and enable their participation and contribution. So, of course, it requires well-defined tasks and diverse participation and appropriate motivational incentives. And should be transparent, scalable, but more importantly, it needs to have the level of quality control that is needed But once the data is collected, you need to have provision to verify and scrub, verify, cleanse, and in some cases even triangulate or validate the data, because it is difficult to difficult to be ascertain as such this data is reliable. But so this process would involve this not in this linear fashion, in an iterative fashion. So initially, we envisaged that we would set up something small with some available open source data. But then, of course, as the survey comes in, as more information comes in, more sources are available, invite more participants to contribute, and so on. So once you establish this structure, then you grow, and then you would validate this structure. Okay, and so some of that, so that this is about the approach. If we go further to the next slide, please. Yeah. So that said, as I mentioned earlier, we don't have to start from scratch. And sometimes we may have to, but at this juncture, we don't have to. There are a number of other tools that we were exploring that could contribute to or could be part of this design. And there are a number of GIS or maps related tools. OpenStreetMap being one built on top of that is related to that is humanitarian OpenStreetMap. There is MapGive, and so if each of these could potentially play a role, or one or more could be selected judicially. And so many of these tools are open source. So for example, humanitarian OpenStreetMap, it allows volunteers to use satellite imagery to map roads, buildings, and essential infrastructure in crisis areas. And so at the same time, that's one MapGive from United States Department, U.S. State Department's program. So also it's a tool that supports OpenStreetMap. And Survey 123 is a survey from Esri, specifically for it's a survey for maps and GIS information. And so this sort of thing, and also the number of data collectors and social media type of information, that tools, that is Fieldwork, that is mobile Fieldworks, Nextdoor for collecting or forming local networks, and of course our good old Qualtrics, SurveyMonkey, Google type, not Google Scholar, my bad, your Google Forms, and as well as social media consolidators. But what's more interesting for us are these platforms, that is like Zooniverse, Kobo Toolbox, Ushahidi, etc. What is actually interesting about them is that these could be used as a collaborative working spaces for even in the non-crisis or pre-crisis situations, and they allow a versatile tool to set up, and where people could come together and collaborate. Zooniverse is a citizen science platform that allows volunteers to collect data in different contexts, but this can be used in the crisis context as well. It allows data to be sorted, labeled, classified, and so on. And And COBO toolbox is not that different. It is a data collection tool for field research and commonly used by nonprofits and so on. It also allows offline data collection and form-based surveys and so on. And Ushahidi is an open source platform designed for mapping and collecting crisis data. And it collects through multiple sources and so on. So if we can move to the next one, this. Yeah. So what it affords us is a way to share the burden. And and then provide a better risk information or characterize the risk and the mitigation pathways in crisis. So this it gives access to data that otherwise or hitherto not available because you don't know who is holding the data, or it is in pieces and siloed and fragmented. Maybe it brings it together. And it could be used in a number of ways in identification, assessment, monitoring, etc. So, but there is a potential to put these together as a system. But more importantly, because it is a crowdsourcing tool or crowdsourcing ecosystem, it alleviates the skill shortage by gradually building this capacity and helps allocate the resources efficiently and proactively, and so that the expertise is freed up to handle more challenging or strategic tasks. So even though most of this fits for the pre-crisis and the post-crisis, it could also be used in crisis situations as well, and which of course has one positive thing, to be able to help band people together. But my question to you is, what are your thoughts on the data story, or how this supply chain works? And what are your insights? What could be done better? And how could you support this? And in terms of providing insights, data, tools, networks, or connections to others who might have this. In a way, it is one short pitch about the survey itself. So with that, I will stop here and happy to take questions or move into discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Nana. Any questions or comments from the room? No? No? You can. All right. Okay.
So
if
we can't do this without you.
Or put any questions, please feel free to put them in the notes, and we will, if you put your name there, we will get back to you on anything you put in there. Okay, so hopefully we'll get a little bit more questions and comments. So we have a Menti. Gracias. Okay. Okay. Right. So, just giving like, are you all in? I'm gonna check. Okay, thank you. So.
First question, how could you contribute to one of the efforts already mentioned above and the current works of the current work of the working group? Any ideas? Active or passive through networks? Feel free to fill this in. Also speak up. We're a small group, so we'd appreciate any input you might have. Did it look really challenging or complex? Okay. Did you think of any ideas for sharing the survey? National, international, anything would help as we're building this. So, okay, nice. Thank you. You could also do that.
All right, so for the social media, there was a typo in here with social media data monitoring. So we have a group there that does social media monitoring, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, in modes of crisis, meaning earthquakes, thunderstorms, etc., and just trying to geolocate where stuff is happening accordingly, and seeing, say, you post an image of a tree fallen over a street or whatever, and really geolocating that, where is that happening? And they're really doing that more or less on a continuous basis, and then have like 1 or 2 data sets already for a larger crisis, having as an example data set.
Any pointers or any links you can provide us, or any connections? That would be super. Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great.
It's Jackie online.
So
I think
that would
one
be
of the
really cool. Thank you.
can you hear me, Stephanie?
Anyone else that would like to elaborate? Also online on
Can
any
you
of these
hear?
points? And thank you very much for
No.
this. Oh, Jackie. Okay. Thank you, Jackie. Just give me a minute. I'll take care of it. So wait. So go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Yep. I was just going to say, I know we have in the survey a question about data sources, and monitoring social media like Twitter is one of the options. As so it's definitely kind of in the survey, but it would be great to have, you know, more information about that. But yeah, we definitely identified that social media can be a really important source of information from the community in the middle of an active event. Thanks. I'll go on mute now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Anyone else? Okay. Shall we move to the next one? Stephanie, is that okay? So, next question. Okay. So who else should be involved and how we can involve them? Yeah, I think so. We've already got one, but any other ideas? Communities. Okay.
So we also have a like the working group has a spreadsheet where we basically collect names and in some cases initiatives or projects that we should contact. So if you have anything like that, please feel free to stick them in the notes or send us an email afterwards, and we'd be happy to include them.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone want to elaborate? So when you say citizen science networks, again, do you have any particular big enough or small but very relative network in mind?
Hello, it's Virginia here, Athena. I was just wondering, anybody who links to a citizen science network might be able to get us.
Someone put in early warning for all, I think. I don't know who that was, but it would be great to hear a bit more about what that means. Okay.
So I only know the initiative from the WMO side, from the World Meteorological Organization, which spent a lot of money into getting the developing countries up so that they can also prepare for these early warning systems. So the richer countries have them already. And I just checked it that this is an initiative with 4 partners, whereas there's a lot of push behind it to get it ready.
So wait a second, Virginia. So ready.
Thank you. Early warning for all is something we're much involved with the hazard information profiles. Certainly WMO is the leader on the forecasting for Pillar 2. The United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction is very much involved in the knowledge hub of Pillar 1. Pillar 3 is run by the International Telecommunications Union, one of the older of all the UN organizations, started in the 1850s, I'm told, who are trying to bring all the telecommunication networks, including the Warsaw International Mechanism that includes the Common Alerting Protocol, which is why you get alerts to your phones, we hope, much more frequently when we think there is a life or death decision to be made. And the final pillar is early action or enabling action, which is very much engaging with the International Red Cross, Red Crescent mechanism. But there's a lot of people who are involved in this. And I wonder, we could certainly link to those if that would be helpful, Stephanie, because we work with them at the UN pretty closely, so that might be useful. I was just wondering, though, about the fact that citizen science networks are often very hard to get to, Stephanie. I wondered if there are people in the room who have links to citizen science networks that really might help us to be able to at least talk with them and share with them some of the learning, particularly after Nana did his lovely project with his students last year, trying to pull together how we could understand what people meant by the citizen science networks and trying to evaluate them, possibly by use of emojis and other things. Nana, I don't know if you've got a comment on that.
Sure. Certainly. Thank you, Virginia. Absolutely, Citizen Science Network, as well as a number of other groups, would be essential to participate. And yeah, it's also finding the right citizen science network. Some of their groups I know are also, they function like a single interest groups on specific issues. Other option is maybe we should potentially organize and run that citizen science network for this project, because project is worthy enough and would be big enough.
Thank you both. Any other thoughts, ideas? Shall we move on to the next one? Okay. All right. Are there any other areas we could look at for approaches, recommendations, or solution we could adopt to crisis situations?
So in other words, where can we steal from to advance what we are trying to do? Not steal. How did Amy say that this morning? Borrow with credit.
I think you might have scared them with a steal. Borrow with credit, final. Okay.
The borrow with credit came from Amy Nürnberger in her evaluation of research this morning. So when I said steal, that's what she said. So any industry that has to respond quickly to sudden changes. Yes. Can you think of any? Hi, yeah, sorry. I mostly came here to listen and learn, so I haven't had much to contribute. But it occurs to me there must be like industries that, depend on their revenue and a lot of money of being able to respond very quickly to sudden changes in their industry or environments, or not just to weather and things like that. There must be industries like that. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but just possibly maybe someone else can. Thanks. So if anyone can think of industries like that. Food industries? Yeah. Finance is another one. Yes, we should write that down. Weather dependence. Yeah, supply chains. Yes. The audiovisual people here. Pharmaceutical, yes. Insurance. Yeah, so that's a really good start. Any other thoughts on this would be greatly appreciated. I can at the moment only see Nana and Virginia online. If anyone else wants to speak, please use the reaction, raise your hand, or just type it in chat. We can see the chat.
All right. Thanks a lot, everyone. So let's move on to the last one. Are there any helpful use cases that you're aware of from recent natural disasters? For example, the floods in Spain, in Valencia, and Hurricane Helene in the US. I think someone mentioned use cases before in terms of what we should do. So I guess we should look more into that. But yeah, I was about to ask because we have a local here. Okay.
Yeah, originally we had actually bushfires as one of our one of the three use cases or scenarios that we wanted to look at. Yeah. Yes, that's true. A lot of countries are completing their COVID-19 inquiries, and certainly Australia has, and I think the UK, have they finished or are they still doing it? I'm not quite sure. Yeah, are there lessons we might find helpful? That is a very good point. And I do vaguely remember that the inquiry into bushfires in Australia had a lot to say about data and what the issues were there. And in particular, the fact that, for example, if fires moved across state boundaries, they changed in rating. And all of a sudden, a fire that used to be catastrophic was now extreme, or the other way around, because they hadn't sorted out their there were no consistent danger ratings. So that's one of the things that's being developed after that, the 2019-2020 bushfires. So yes, looking at the COVID-19 inquiries, that would be useful. Are there actually inquiries into other disasters, like anything else into cyclones that anyone is aware of, or earthquakes? Okay, and Fukushima. So the tsunami and the earthquake. That's a good point. Yeah. Okay, that sounds good. Anyone wants to add anything, either online or in person? Okay. Well, thanks for your contributions. Again, if you would like to add more, or flooding in UK, the 2007 public inquiry was very useful. Okay, we can certainly look that up.
Christchurch earthquake was one.
Yep.
And
Yeah, I think that would be good.
So I think that's the wrap up now. Don't know.
So I just have to look at what I was actually saying there. So, so for one thing, we have a Zotero reference library where we just pull together articles and things like that. At the moment, it's pretty empty, but we're starting to work on it. I think the link is in the collaborative notes, possibly. Okay, cool. So if you have if you would like to contribute there, let us know, and we can. I think Athena, you set it up, so Athena can probably invite you if you'd like. Again, with the survey dissemination, we've already said, put in the collaborative notes if you'd like to receive, if you'd like to receive the survey, and or if you would like to help us disseminate the survey. We will be working on the 3 case studies, so earthquakes, COVID, and cyclones. Oh, great. Thanks, Virginia. And again, if there's anything you would like to contribute to that or to our final recommendation, which will probably come a little bit later than we had hoped, but we got a bit delayed with the survey ethics. It takes longer than you think. That would be great as well. I don't know if you are members of the group, Martina, I know, but I'm actually not sure. But if you would like to, you're most welcome to join our group. And we'll keep you informed about everything that's going on and our monthly meetings. I think that's probably all. I actually can't remember what comes next. There we go. Thank you very much for coming, and thanks for bearing with us with the technical issues. I don't know if, Virginia, did you want to say anything more?
I would be honored to. Thank
Yep,
you. Stephanie, thank you for facilitating with Athena such a great session. I think we've had some incredible discussions with the Menti and lots of incredible things, but we know that data has been a problem always. And the PIT review, for instance, I've just pulled out one comment that the methods and timescales of publication of data should be pre-planned, perhaps in parallel with producing wider information templates. We've known about it for years. We've got to do better. We can't just rely on the international health regulations that supported COVID-19. There is no other similar system for reporting global disasters. And there's a lot of it is voluntary. So we really need to have your help to get us to do it. If these are some of the thoughts that are useful, Stephanie, and everybody who's online, it's a great privilege to work with you all. And please, those in the room, those online who haven't worked with us before, do join. We'd love your help, wouldn't we? And thank you all.